Let's do this. Ask me anything for Linchpin for March 27th, 2025. I'm doing this once again from my phone. If you watch every week, you know that my external monitor and laptop have not been working well for YouTube Live, so that's okay. Phone to the rescue. So here we go. I've got a few shout outs and then we'll dive into the questions today. First shout out. This is to a relatively new member, Adam H. He just celebrated his 2-month anniversary with Linchpin, so congrats, Adam. And he's a big-time power lifter, which is funny because the headline of today's show, the label, if you will, is CrossFit versus powerlifting, but actually doesn't have anything to do with Adam. It has to do with a specific question that a member asked. But Adam's a powerlifter, and he says that he came to Linchpin to get some conditioning ideas to lay over my powerlifting training, but it's quickly becoming an equal priority. That's very cool. My biggest win after 2 months. I can keep up with my 12-year-old volleyball player enough to practice with her every day. First of all, that's awesome. That's a huge win. And then running and jumping again without any stiffness, sore spots, or worrying about injuring myself. That is super cool. So congrats, Adam. You're making it happen. And I enjoy seeing your posts every day in the private Facebook group. Second shout out today. Okay, this is from Jody D. Jody is profoundly strong with gymnastics. She's a beast with gymnastics. I just recently posted a video of her on the Linchpin Instagram and on my Instagram of her doing a strict 1-rep pull-up with 50 pounds. Right, so she's profoundly strong bodyweight movements. But this is the heavy day of the high heart rate that we did the other day, which was the 10 down to 1, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, of a back squat that was written as 185 for men, 135 for women. So 10 down to 1 of a back squat, burpee, and a ring row. And you're supposed to make the ring row very difficult. And now the key is after each set of ring rows, you do a 12-second L sit. And that pesky little 12 seconds, it adds up. But I did that workout a couple days ago at 185, and I'm here to tell you my biscuits are burnt right now. But Jody posted here that she did this in July. So what is that? 6 months ago, 8 months ago, something like that. She did that 8 months ago in July in about 20 minutes and so she repeated it. Today it came up again. And she did it today, or 2 days ago, I should say, 40 pounds heavier. So she increased the load on the bar by 40 pounds. That's the only thing that changed. And today she did it 2 minutes faster with 40 more pounds on the bar. So I would say that's astonishing. So big congrats to you. That's a huge improvement. I mean, my goodness. Okay, and final shout out today to Amanda B. She says, truly, I love your programming. I just turned 40 and I'm as fit and strong as I have been in 20 years. So that's awesome. Congrats, Amanda. Congrats. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the questions today. So, first question is from Josh B. It says, hi coach, is there any training stimulus value to blowing up every once in a while? I understand from your past discussions there could be other reasons to pick a strategy that results in a less than optimal time, but I'm wondering if it's a good rule of thumb that the fastest time provides the best return on intensity, or if every once in a while should we pick a strategy that we're pretty sure won't work out because it's so aggressive. Okay, so yes, Josh, you're on the right mindset for most people, most circumstances, most of the time, right? What do you want to do most of the time? You want to, if you believe that intensity drives results, then you want to approach your workouts in a way that will allow you to maximize your intensity given the entire scope of the workout, right? If it's a 20-minute workout and you express a tremendous amount of intensity in the first 2 minutes, so much so that you crash and burn and tank for the rest of it, then your average intensity was actually lower than you had you not come out of the gates quite so hot and maintain something that was still very challenging, but you could keep it for the 20 minutes. Then at the end of the workout, your overall intensity was higher. And from everything that we understand, that's probably going to yield better long-term fitness results for you. So yes, most circumstances, most of the time, that's what you should do. However, if we're talking about just something to do every now and then, okay, well, that's a different story. I think that every now and then, there's value in doing what you just said. Feel free to go out a bit too hot. That doesn't, don't read the word unsafe in there. Be safe, move well, but go at a pace that you're like, ooh, I'm taking a risk here. I think this is unsustainable. And if every now and then you do that, that's okay because it's not the lion's share of what you're doing. And there's value in learning about yourself. There's value in learning what your limits are. And every now and then you'll learn that indeed those are your limits, just like you thought it was unsustainable. But there's a chance that every now and then you're going to surprise yourself the other way. And you might say, you know what, I didn't think I could hold that run pace on Helen and still do the pull-ups and kettlebell swings unbroken. And then you did. And all of a sudden you're faster than you realize. You thought that you'd be faster doing quick singles on a barbell movement, and you decide to hold onto the barbell and go touch and go today, figuring that there's no way you're going to be able to do it. And then you do. So you might find that out. And again, you'll find out the opposite every now and then. But that's, yes, I do think there's value in that. Rusty P. Linchpin workouts of the day being my priority, of course, but what would your advice be if somebody wanted to sprinkle in a little bodybuilding type movements as optional after that? And by the way, your videos of you working out with your daughter in the garage are fantastic. Thank you. Hoping to get her on that path as well. So, short answer to your question, you want to sprinkle in some additional bodybuilding stuff after the Linchpin workout of the day? Absolutely. You're totally good to go. Fitness freedom, my friends. You can do whatever you want to do. I would categorize this under the topics we've discussed before of want versus need. If you're eating well, sleeping well, attacking the Linchpin workouts of the day with an appropriate level of intensity, scaling and modifying as needed, do you need anything else to be fit, fast, and ferociously strong on the planet? No, you do not. Would you like to do something else because you enjoy it? Have at it. Rock some bench press, rock some bicep curls, some skull crushers, do whatever you want to do. Have an absolute blast. Life's too short to worry about that. And that also goes to other things not bodybuilding related. Do you just love to run? Because we all know that running is cool. You want to just do some running? Do some running. You love strict pull-ups. You love, fill in the blank, rowing. You love whatever you want to do. Yes. The answer is yes, you can do it. And then, of course, just understand, listen to your body, be intelligent, because everybody probably has, a different size cup, and your cup might fill up before or after somebody else's. So just make sure that you're not doing too much, listen to your body, and is whatever extra thing that you're deciding to sprinkle in because you enjoy it, is it additive to what you're doing? And now has it become to the point where you're not recovering and your primary focus, which is the workouts of the day, are suffering? Just be aware of those things, kind of take them all in. Okay. Moving on to the next question. Joshua S. There's been a lot of talking about resetting PRs at certain milestones in life, turning 40, for example, turning 45 or 50. Is this a feature you could request BTWB to offer, or does it exist somewhere and I'm already not aware of it? I don't think the feature currently exists. It's an interesting topic, actually, to talk to the BTWB crew and see if they could just make it something that you could toggle on or off. So I'll pass that along to them. Corey C. On cardio movements using machines, for example, like bikes or rowers, should we pay much thought or attention to our pace, split times, or RPMs? I personally don't, and I just gauge myself for the pace and not the machine. I can pace off the information that the machine is relaying, but do the split times and that pace matter? I understand maybe in a long time domain like a 5K or a 10K row, but for example, the Tabata intervals the other day that were just 2 minutes, I just go and I don't focus on those metrics from the machine. But I see that some people do. Is this something you consider important or not? Okay, so I would say this is kind of relating to the first question we had about pacing versus just going full send and seeing what happens. Unsatisfying answer, but I do think both have value. Getting on there and just going for broke and see what happens. Can you hold the pace that's more? You're trusting your gut, great. You're probably pretty darn good at trusting your gut and knowing what you can do for 2 minutes. You've been doing this for a while. But what you might want to do, and I see what you're saying about the longer effort, like on a 5K or 10K on the row, I know this is a big effort, and so I'm gonna, look at the monitor and say, hey, I want to hold about a 2 minute per 500 because that's going to get me X at the end of a 5K row. And I know if I go faster than that, I'll crash and burn. If I go slower, I won't be happy. So I look at the pace because I have this long effort. But you're saying like on the short time domain high intensity, you just go by your gut. There's nothing wrong with that. What you might find beneficial in doing that, whether you look at the watts or you look at the RPMs or whatever it happens to be, is maybe next time you go on there, you're good at trusting your gut. So do one of those, do your normal 2 minute deal or whatever it is, fill in the blank. Trust your gut. You're going with your gut. You're pedaling your tail off. And then take a look at the monitor, whether it's watts or RPMs, and see this gut trusting pace that you have. What is that on the RPMs? What is that on the watts? Just make a little mental note of it, then look away again. Don't worry about it. And now have that in your head as to that wattage or pace is what you feel is appropriate, okay? And maybe you could play that game, let's say you're doing 6 2-minute intervals. Play that game on intervals 1, 2, and 3 and see are they all kind of close when you look down, or is there an average or whatnot? And then what you could do is, let's say they all are roughly around, I'm just picking a number here on RPMs, 70 RPMs, okay? And then say, okay, every time I looked down, it was around 70. So that seems to be just naturally what I feel is miserably uncomfortable for 2 minutes, but I can sustain. Okay, well now on interval number 4, I'm going to try to hold 75 RPMs for the first minute, and then I'll kick it down to 70 for the second minute and see, did I crash and burn or could I actually do that? And then you will learn, are you more capable than you thought? And if that feels like, oh, that was a slice of living hell, but I survived, well, then maybe on interval number 5, you try to hold the 75 RPMs for 90 seconds out of the 2 minutes. And then you could play these games, and then you have this little metric that the next time that the bike comes up, yes, you could go by your gut, but you could say to yourself, okay, I know I can do 70 RPMs or X amount of wattage. So I'm going to start there on interval number 1. And on interval number 2, I have this goal. On interval number 3, I have this goal. And then if it's too much, you ratchet it back down. So paying attention to those metrics and paces, I do think there is some good value there, and you might want to play with that. Okay, pardon me while I get some caffeine. Okay, now we're cooking with gas. This is from Mike D. Mike D. Was there a Mike D in the Beastie Boys? Maybe not, I'm not sure. Mike D. I'm trying to wrap my head around some scheduling components for Linchpin workouts. I've been balancing doing some PT for my meniscus, training jiu-jitsu 3 to 4 times a week, and committing to at least 4 Linchpin workouts a week. Wow, Mike, my friend, you are packing a lot into your week. 4 Linchpin workouts, you said at least, jiu-jitsu 3 to 4 times, and then twice a week you're meeting with a PT. The way my schedule works right now, it's much better for me to take my true rest days on Wednesday and Saturday instead of Thursday and Sunday. Also, because of my PT schedule, I can't always do a workout that will really tax my legs before PT. Okay, you've got a lot of considerations, my friend. I don't want to cherry pick workouts. Good for you. But I find myself moving days around to fit my schedule. That's understandable. What's the thought on mixing the order of the workouts throughout the week? Is there a method to the madness? And do you have any advice for somebody who may have to pick and choose what is being done on a certain day? Okay, sure. Very cool question. And I bet this question, people will resonate with this. Maybe they don't have the PT and the jiu-jitsu, but something. Okay. So, first of all, do the order of the workouts matter? Let's cover that. Short answer is yes, that they do. They're laid out in a specific order, and if you could start to develop that strength and conditioning IQ, that fitness IQ, as to why they're laid out in a certain order, then what's really cool is you'll start to kind of see the matrix, because right now they might just look like workouts. And once you start to see the matrix, well then you can take your life, they're laid out in an ideal pattern. So under ideal conditions, you'll do the workouts in the order that they're laid out for optimal results. But we live in the real world. So there's real and then there's ideal. Ideally, you do them as they're laid out. But the real world and your schedule and your commitments don't care about what's ideal. You have to do what's real for you and make those concessions. So if you look at the workouts, look at things like loading. Is it light? Is it moderate? Is it heavy? Is it body weight? Look for these patterns. Look for the gross movement patterns. Hinging at the hip. Are we pressing? Are we pulling? Are we going below parallel? What does it happen to be? Is it long time domain? Is it short time domain? And when you look at things like that, you'll notice that usually, okay, sometimes we deviate from this intentionally, but usually you'll notice that, if we go below parallel, well, we probably won't go below parallel the next day. There'll be a couple of days before you see that gross movement pattern again. Maybe the same with hinging in the hip, maybe with an upper body pull, for example, and that gives the athlete this work to rest ratio for the gross movement pattern that is going to allow them to advance optimally. So when you mix up the workout order, because that's what your life and your schedule demands, and you don't pay attention to something like the gross movement pattern, well, then you might be going below parallel 2 days in a row all the time. That's actually okay to do every now and then, because you're deliberately and intentionally exposing yourself to something that's maybe less than ideal from a training standpoint, because real life, and if you do manual labor outside, manual labor doesn't care if you do the same gross movement pattern 2 days in a row or 2 continuous months in a row. So exposing yourself to that every now and then has value for the real world, but that's not optimally how we would train on a regular basis. Okay, so does that make sense? But if you're not paying attention to those gross movement patterns, for example, and you're rearranging the workouts for your jiu-jitsu and your PT, then you might inadvertently or unknowingly do the same gross movement patterns back to back, which is not ideal. So if you look at it through that lens, and then you have to rearrange the days, like you said, and take some different rest days, try to do it so that you're spacing out those gross movement patterns a little bit, and that will probably set you up for the most success possible. That would be my recommendation to you. Okay, from Brennan F. What is the significance of the 45 rep scheme in CrossFit workouts? So when you say the 45 rep scheme, I think you're probably talking about the classic, 21-15-9, which comes out to 45 repetitions. And that, I don't hold me to this, but if you ask for my best recollection of this from, years of interacting with Greg Glassman, things like that, is he would routinely, tell the story where he was a gymnast growing up, I think specifically a rings guy. And in the off season for gymnastics, he tried to basically do some training protocols and create some things on his own in his home, in his garage or whatnot, that would, to the best of his ability, simulate what he said was the incredible intensity and pure misery, physical misery and demand of a rings routine. And he played around with a lot of things, and until he paired a thruster with a pull-up and rep schemes until he settled on the 21-15-9, which had this descending order, which ideally would allow the athlete to keep moving, because intensity was key and critical and beneficial. And so that descending rep scheme allowed him with those thrusters and pull-ups to keep moving. And then that 21-15-9 didn't necessarily need to be unbroken. That was a series of numbers that was easily divisible. So that 21 worked out really well, as you could attack it in 3 sets of 7. It could be a 10-6-5. It could be a whole bunch of other things. The set of 15 could be 3 sets of 5. It could be 6-5-4. It could be a 10 and a 5. It could be all these different things as well. And then the same with the 9. You do a 6 and a 3, a 5 and a 4, 3 sets of 3, 1 unbroken 9. So the rep scheme worked out well. The overall volume for something short and sharp seemed to work well for his needs, coming up with something to simulate his off-season gymnastics training. And that rep scheme kind of stuck around, and it's been profoundly useful ever since then. Miranda G, what continues to be the biggest challenges and successes that you see as a coach for our community specifically? Well, the biggest successes, I think that's easy. That's just all of you, quite frankly. The Linchpin community is by far the biggest success. And that might not make sense to anybody outside of the Linchpin community, but if you're in the private Facebook group, if you're in the squads feature in BTWB, you see it, you experience it, you feel it. Like, again, I sound like a broken record and I must be lying, right? Like, how can an online community be like that? But it is just full of tremendously awesome, real people that support one another, and there's just no drama, no nonsense. I mean, it's wonderful. And then the other part of your question, the biggest challenges. The biggest challenge. I don't know if this is the biggest challenge. I'm not exactly sure the biggest challenge, but I can say the biggest challenge is also probably related to what I also said is the biggest success. It is preserving and maintaining and protecting that community at all costs. At all costs. Um, how you do that's tough to articulate, but there's a lot of, I don't know where to go with this. There's a lot of noise and chaos and craziness in the world. There's a lot of wonderful things too. And this is not meant to come off as pessimistic, right? But I kind of feel like for the Linchpin community, we're in some really, my goal is to like have you in like a really well-built house or a well-built community. And the shades are down, right? And as far as you know, when you open up the shades, because everything inside the house is so cool and fun and friendly, that it's a bright, sunshiny day out there. And every now and then you open up and it is sunshine out there. It's great. But the goal is for inside the house to still feel that way. Family-like, supportive, real, authentic, no drama, no nonsense. Even on days where you open up that shade to the outside world and it's just stormy and raining cats and dogs and there's just craziness out there, that can be out there. But all of us need a nice place that whatever nonsense is going on around the world, we have a place where we can just focus on fitness, focus on long-term health and fitness, of making each other better and supporting one another. And so preserving that space is, that's the goal. Ooh, here we go. Veronica S. And this is where the original thing of CrossFit versus powerlifting comes. Okay, Veronica's words, not mine. I have a lunkhead son that is a young Marine. He's been doing powerlifting workouts and I finally convinced him to try Linchpin. Now that he's done 2 workouts, he would like to know, why is this better? Can you speak to my 18-year-old son? Okay, so first of all, congrats to him for choosing the path of being in the Marine Corps. Good on him. Can I convince him that it's better, or why is it better? Well, I would say maybe it's not. That would be my initial thing, right? It's the whole compared to what? Is CrossFit or powerlifting better? Well, compared to what? And what are your actual goals? Are your goals to be a powerlifter? Then CrossFit is not superior to powerlifting. Are your goals to be as well-rounded as possible? Is general physical preparedness your priority? Being able to move light, moderate, and heavy loads for long, short, and medium time domains, to be able to do all kinds of body weight moves, to be able to run and jump and like not get tired and be explosive like GPP, well then yes, CrossFit is profoundly superior to powerlifting. So it just depends upon what your goals happen to be and what your son's goals are. Neither one's right or wrong, it's just what path is he going down. Now he's in the Marine Corps, but the Marine Corps has every job imaginable, right? You could be in the Marine Corps and be a pilot. You could be a grunt. You could be in armor. You could be a lawyer. You could be, sitting at a desk doing supply, logistics. You could be anything under the sun. So if we're talking about actual real world function for his occupation in the Marine Corps, if he is behind a desk the majority of the time, like that's his primary MOS, then I don't think powerlifting is going to treat him bad at all, in all honesty. Is he out in the field with a rifle in his hand, a rucksack on his back, and having to go out and do that job? Well, then I think it's the easiest decision in the whole world, that CrossFit would be infinitely better than powerlifting. And this is not an attack on anyone's character. It just is. I mean, there's a reason why powerlifters have a specific focus, because they want to excel in a relatively limited capacity and be exceptional, and they're willing to suffer in a whole bunch of other domains, such as their body weight, their conditioning, their stamina, all of that good stuff right there. Well, if you're out in the field, you need all of those components. And if you're just powerlifting, you are going to be more of a liability to your teammates than an asset. I mean, that's just the God's honest truth. If you're in an office job, probably doesn't matter. Okay, from Phil T. Wall walks. Wall walks seem to show up in the open. I realize that the open isn't really the measure of fitness over your lifetime, but I'm curious. Why don't we see them very often in Linchpin programming? These maybe fall under something that's popular, but not quite as effective. Are there maybe other movements that would fall into this that maybe have transference? I see what you're saying. So maybe we do movements in Linchpin that have transference, such as pressing movements, midline work, dumbbell thrusters. Exactly that. Even if you don't do the wall walk, if you do these other movements, you have the capacity to do the wall walk. Yes, Phil, you're onto something there. But if somebody wanted more wall walks in their life and wanted to sub them into a workout, what kind of similar movements could they take the place of? Great question. So yes, you're not going to see a lot of wall walks in Linchpin, and intentionally so, because they are something that fits the unique needs of the open, and you could not do a wall walk for your entire rest of your time on this planet and be just fine and probably never, ever, 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 ever notice it if you did some of the other movements that you're just saying right there. But the open is unique. The open tries to, in a few workouts over the course of a few weeks, have a test of fitness that will at the same time be highly participatory, that you can have as many people do it as possible, has the lowest barrier to entry possible to make it as easy for as many people as possible to say yes and sign up, regardless if they are beginner, intermediate, or advanced, while at the same time having those same workouts that everybody could show up for pre-screen, so that the best of the best rises to the top to then advance to another segment of competition. And then while at the same time, and this might be a part that the casual observer doesn't pay as much attention to, they have to also take into account logistical considerations across like 10,000 different affiliates. Okay, so here's what I mean by that. The wall walks solve some of those constraints. A handstand push-up, we're fans of strict handstand push-ups here at Linchpin, but I can tell you from living in this world for a long period of time back in the day, I mean, how many different handstand push-ups, rules, regulations, and standards have there been in the open? And it's not that doing handstand push-ups is that difficult, but unless you make it like rigid, all of a sudden there's somebody that does something or finds a way to shorten the range of motion that you never observed, and you're like, well, we didn't know that they would do handstand push-ups that way, and next year they try to correct for that, and the rules are a bit different. And then someone finds some way to still do it within the rules, but tweak something out that wasn't really in the spirit of it, but they didn't violate the letter of it, and they're like, somebody did that with the handstand push-ups. We had to change how we do them again. And so they're a miserable movement to try to have some fair, equal, easy to understand judging component. And then handstand walks. Handstand walks are a great movement. They're a high skill movement, and they also are a good separator in something like the open to get that breakout from beginner to intermediate into advanced. And so they're worthwhile including as well. And so the wall walk kind of takes a little bit of the load of the handstand push-up misery, a little bit of the load of the handstand walk skill or strength component, if you will, but then takes into account a big factor of the logistics that HQ has to consider when trying to put out a competition that will be worldwide, and 10,000 affiliates have the opportunity to potentially participate, and a bunch of other people. And what I mean by that is that they just had handstand walks in an actual workout in the open, and it was 15 feet down and 15 feet back. Well, then you're going to have a huge number of gym owners that are like, what kind of just random open floor plan do you think I have that you want me to run these heats of the open, and I have to have this piece of gear and that piece of gear and people over here, and now I have to have all these different lanes that are like obstacle free for these handstand walks? Like, I just can't do that. We're in a small space. We're in whatever it happens to be. There would be a potential uproar on Reddit or something like that. So HU has to take all these factors into account and try to figure out some way to make the competition happen. And so when taking into account those broad brushes like the handstand push-up, the handstand walk, and then the logistics, a wall walk is a relatively decent compromise on many of those things. Is it ideal? No, it doesn't do any of those one things optimally, but it's a relatively meaningful and pretty darn good compromise given the constraints and the goals of something like the Open. But we don't have those constraints and we don't have those goals. So we can just do the handstand push-ups and scale and modify them if needed. We can just do the handstand walk and scale and modify as needed. And so that's why that, based upon everything else that we do, I mean, you saw plenty of people in Linchpin that like all participated in the Open, and the wall walks came up and they did wall walks because we do all these other elements, like you're saying, that have that great transfer into them. So yeah. Okay. And so yeah, you could put them in if you wanted to. Handstand push-ups, handstand walks, things like that. Feel free to work some in. And then finally, from Andrew M. How do you maintain motivation and discipline to work out when you don't feel like it? I'm referring to challenges like hot weather, snow and cold, or body and mind issues, depression, lack of sleep, things like that. What do you tell yourself when you face these and other challenges? Okay, all right, let's see here. Oh, I almost dropped my camera. Okay, cool, sorry. Doing one thing here. Stand by, stand by. Okay, back to the question. So here's what I would say. I wish I had a magic, do these 2 steps and all of a sudden you'll be a disciplined person, but that has not been my focus or finding on this, but I do have some recommendations for you. And this has been said by tons of other people, they've made slogans and everything out of it. I think, Jocko makes a big slogan out of it of, basically discipline over motivation, or however he says that thing. I do actually agree with that. I would focus on discipline more than motivation, because motivation, it's a fair weather friend. It's fleeting. You feel motivated today, you don't feel motivated tomorrow. And so if you only do things when you're motivated, you might not do them half the time or more. So probably better to focus on developing discipline, and then regardless of what other external factors you have going on, you'll do the work, and that's a good thing to do. So first thing you got to do, if you're looking to maybe improve your discipline and become a more disciplined person, you have to have, disciplined people, their actions align with their goals. And it doesn't matter if it's fun or not fun, rainy or sunny, cold or tired, they know their goals, and then they have the discipline to pursue those goals almost no matter what, most of the time. They stay consistent with it. So if you want to have your actions align with your goals, the first thing you need to do is identify your goals. Why are you working out? Why is that important to you? Why do you want to eat better? Why, whatever it happens to be, figure out what are those goals that you have and why are they important. And it might benefit you to write them down. And then let's say it's nutrition, okay? Or this can be working out or whatever. Start small. If all of a sudden you think you're going to overhaul your entire life and do a 180 change in everything that you've been doing for decades, you're probably going to have a very low chance of success in something like that. So identify what you need to do to start chasing these goals, and then take baby steps and small steps to make that happen. If your goal is working out 5 times a week and right now you're working out 0, jumping to 5 times a week probably isn't going to cut it. Start with 2 times a week, and when that doesn't seem overwhelming anymore, then make it 3. When that doesn't seem overwhelming, make it 4. But going from 0 to 5 is probably not what you want. So a baby step. Do you just eat like a drunken pirate the entire time? Okay, everything in your life needs to change nutritionally. If tomorrow you wake up and everything that you've known in your fridge is changed and you're like, what is a vegetable? Probably gonna have a low chance of success. So maybe you identify the top 5 culprits that are holding you back nutrition-wise and just attack one of them. You leave the other 4 for now. And when that seems okay, not the end of the world, attack the next one. Again, take these baby steps. And each time you accomplish one of those baby steps, and one of those baby steps doesn't seem so overwhelming anymore, like that's a small win that's logged in your brain. You were successful. It felt good. It wasn't overwhelming. You could do it. And that might build more confidence to then attack the next one, which is then another win. And this thing can snowball in a positive way. You could also create a system of accountability. Sometimes peer pressure is a good thing. And so if you've got goals that you want to do, it's working out, it's eating, get yourself an accountability buddy, check in with that individual, help keep each other on track, post about it. And then chase progress, not perfection. As corny as that is, it's really true. Perfection is really hard to obtain. And if that's your bar that you've set for yourself, you're probably going to fall short of that bar and view a lot of things as a failure. If your goal is to just improve, again, you're chasing progress, not perfection, and you've got these incremental baby steps, you're probably going to have a better outcome. So that is that, my friends. Ask me anything for Thursday, March 27th, 2025. It's a rest day for most of us. Of course, I encourage you to take it. Keep being awesome, Linchpin, and we'll talk later.